I kind of let other artists know, it's like, you know what, you don't have to wait for someone to give you permission to call yourself a writer. Guess what? If you write, you're a writer. And it doesn't matter what kind of writing that is. If you kind of like feel passionate about writing and you stay consistent with your writing, then that's what makes you a writer. Same with art or dance or any of the, filmmaking or what have you. So I just say, just really throw off those chains of limitation that maybe the outside world, you've learned from the outside world, and just do what you need to do. Say what you need to say as an artist and a writer and a filmmaker and a dancer and so on and so forth. And because the universe will support that.
Quay Mindeluisi Pam Palmater, and I am the host of this show, The Warrior Life. I'm an Indigenous lawyer, professor, author, and activist from Ugbaganjig, which is Eel River Bar First Nation, part of the larger Mi'kmaq Nation. And my motto is education for action on Indigenous rights, social justice, and protecting the planet. And on this podcast, you're going to get an education, but one of a totally different kind. It's one that's informed by the cultures, insights, knowledges, and lived experiences of a wide variety of amazing Indigenous peoples. They could be authors, artists, they could be musicians, academics, as well as leaders, traditional or elected, activists, land defenders, water protectors. All of them, in their own way, are on the front lines of Indigenous resistance, resurgence, and cultural revitalization. Today's episode is going to be phenomenal. I'm already thinking it's a phenomenal episode, and I haven't even had a chance to introduce the guest. But she has infused the art and literary world with her heart, her spirit, her culture, and she is someone who is in real time a legacy and helping so many Indigenous peoples behind the scenes. So stay tuned. You don't want to miss this episode. Welcome back to the Warrior Life podcast. I'm your host, Pam Palmater, and today is going to be a phenomenal episode, like I said, teased at the beginning, because we have the most amazing artist, author, publisher, producer, person you could imagine, and it's January Rogers. I am thrilled that she could be with us today because we're going to talk to her about her work and her journey as an artist, because I think that's really important. We get to really understand the inspirations, the successes, but also the challenges and struggles that artists have. She is an exceptionally accomplished, well-known, award-winning artist, writer, producer, spoken word, publisher, mentor, you name it, she's doing it. And she's served as an artist or writer in residence for so many institutions, I can't even list them all, but some of them include the Banff Centre Indigenous Storytellers and Spoken Word, Audible Canada, that's huge. Audible Canada's Indigenous Writers Circle. And then, of course, at Western U, McMaster, University of Alberta, Lethbridge, OACD. So many. She is literally sharing her knowledge and spirit everywhere she goes. And she's also won some awards that we're going to talk to her about today. One for the American Indian Film Festival, Best Music Video. And then, of course, our universal favorite, imagineNATIVE, for Best Experimental Sound Prize. And of course, just to add to everything she does, because she doesn't have enough time, right? She's got more publications than I can count. Bloodsport, Ego of a Nation, As Long as the Sun Shines, Peace and Dress, and so many more. And if all of that wasn't enough, just because there might be 1 hour left in the day instead of sleeping, she's also the owner and operator of her very own publishing and production company. Wow. I literally want to ask you all about this January and give you an opportunity to introduce yourself. But before we get started, I think it's really, really important to acknowledge the recent passing of someone who has just had such a massive impact in the art and literary world, Daryl McLeod. He just recently passed. His passing is going to be impacted by so many people. His life has impacted so many people. And January wanted to make sure that we dedicate this episode to him and all of his work and all of those that he has touched. So thank you, Daryl McLeod, for your work. We're hoping that you make your way to the ancestors, and all of us will be praying on that for Daryl's family and friends and everyone who knew him. So with that said, January, the amazing, welcome to the Warrior Life podcast.
Woo, thank you for all of that. You do the spirit good. I feel very kind of spiritually fulfilled already. And thank you for mentioning our brother, our uncle, literary uncle there, Daryl McLeod in, one funny story is I had opportunities to read with him at different events in Whistler and what was the other in Montreal and Quebec City. And he would love to sing whenever he had the opportunity. And there was a band in Whistler when we were reading at this event, and he said, can I sing with the band? Can I get up there and sing? And he loved to sing, "Fly me to the moon, let me sing among the stars." And so now, Daryl McLeod, you can travel to the moon, brother. And we're going to just watch your star rise up above. And, he's passed in this blaze of success. As I was explaining before, he came into writing later in his life. And when he did walk across that threshold as a writer, everybody took notice because the writing was just so exceptional. And his storytelling he was telling his own story. And it was so powerful and beautiful with his truth that you couldn't even look away. Like, it was just really storytelling with great integrity. So thank you, Pam, for allowing us to dedicate this episode to our uncle, our brother, Daryl McLeod.
I love that story because now every time I look at the moon,
yes,
that's who I'm going to think of, like it's what a great story to connect people with good, positive memories. Well, you know me, as a lawyer, I have 8,000 questions. I'll try not to be a total interrogator like Law and Order. But before we get into those, I really would love to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself the way you like to and where you're from.
Thank you for that. Yeah, Sego Sewaguego, Yunyat's January Rogers. And actually, if you want to learn how to say the month of January, it's Joktagoa in the Mohawk language. So Yunyat's Joktagoa. Hi, everyone. My name is January Rogers. I'm Mohawk Tuscarora from Six Nations of the Grand River. And that's where I happen to be transmitting my image and my whole body and spirit to you from. And I had the opportunity, to move back home. I was living for many years, 25 years, as a matter of fact, as a guest on Coast Salish territory, again, where I met Daryl McLeod. And that's where I actually became a writer. And, we'll get a little bit more into that. But as a guest on Coast Salish territory, I was very honored to be able to live there and was embraced by the Coast Salish people in that territory. But coming home was very pivotal for me personally and for my career. And so being home on Six Nations, it's like, for example, today is an absolutely stellar, beautiful summer day here on the territory, although the summer's been absolutely bizarre in terms of weather. Like, we've been fending off freaking tornadoes and flooding and all these things. But yeah, just before joining you in this chat, Pam, I was just out, watering my garden, and my God, there's no more greater joy than being able to water your garden, and collect some nice food from the garden. So anyways, I don't take any of those things for granted, for sure. And what I do, as you've mentioned, when I got home, is I started the Ojistoh Publishing and Productions company, if you will, And I came home to support other writers. I mean, I have been on my journey, and I know for people who know me, they go, God, she never misses an opportunity to tell us how freaking old she is. So I'm 61, and, and I just keep telling people that. But it's important because then that gives, that's my street cred, like that's my art cred. It's like, yeah, I've done a few things, and I've seen a few things, and I've been a few places, and I'm bringing all of that experience home to support the writers that are not so well known here on the territory. And I mean, I think that's the one of the greatest responsibilities we have as Native people, as artists, as senior artists, is to lend that hand to those who want it. So I through the publishing label, I have been able to publish one author here on Six Nations, Dawn Cheryl Hill, with her collection of short story memoirs called Memory Keeper, and that book's done very well, I have to say. And it's not. I'm not trying to be a big splashy publisher. Trust me, there's a lot of publishers in the world, and a lot of publishers that do great things. I'm just a baby. I'm a baby publisher, and I'm just trying to help folks out. And I'm in talks with the next author who Ojistoh will pick up from here in the territory, and just incredible stories, like real life stories. And so I think that is what makes the book that I have published so successful, is folks are really interested to know, gosh, what was it like to live on the res before all of this internet stuff, before we squirreled away indoors all day long and things like that. I love one of the author who I published, Dawn Cheryl Hill, in one of her stories, she's just talking about being a kid and going out and playing on a tree branch. That was it. That was play, outdoor play. So I just love that kind of stuff. So and what I do too is I do my best to try to still write now too, although I'm very consumed with other contracts and radio contracts like yourself, Pam. And it's really important that we create space within the terrestrial territory, in the streaming territory, in the podcast territory. All of these places are territory that, if we don't take up space in those territories or claim space within those territories, then someone else is going to do it. And I don't mean that in any kind of competitive way. I'm just saying we deserve space there too. And it's about telling our stories, about promoting our voices. And so I have to thank you so very much, Pamela, for having me on today on the Warrior Podcast. This is it. I love this. This is where I live. I love this kind of stuff.
Coming from the warrior woman herself, from Six Nations. Oh my goodness. Thank you. And I'm thinking all of this wisdom being equated with street cred, I'm going to tell my kids from now on, instead of them calling me an old lady, it's like, oh no, I have street cred. And you know why? Because Warrior January said so. And she's in Six Nations.
Yeah, man. Oh, geez. Come on.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Oh, my goodness. We might be
junior OGs, but still.
Yeah, we're just babies.
We're babies. We're just babies.
Yeah, I love what you said too about taking up space, because I actually came to podcasting for not the purpose of podcasting. You know how some people want to create a famous show? It was because every time I was interviewed in the media, you get 1 minute to talk about an issue. How do you explain land back in 1 minute? How do you address treaty rights in 1 minute? And so you never really get to educate people. And then there's so many people in the media that they don't include really important people, community-based people, land defenders, water protectors, all the people that aren't, say, elected, or a famous actor, for example. And so I thought, you know what? I want a podcast where I can talk as long as I want to about any issue and show all these amazing people. And you're one of these amazing people. But I know amazing people didn't just poof out of
Right.
the air.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people who, especially young Indigenous people, who are thinking, oh, I want to be an artist, I want to be a writer, I want to do all these great things. What has your journey been like? Because it really isn't just poof, all of a sudden, look at all these great things I'm doing. It's a journey with ups and downs, and I'd love to hear about some of that. Like, is this something from the time you were 6, you were like, "Yep, I'm doing this. This is my life."
Somewhat, yeah. I mean, I was just thinking about how if you live in a kind of like a bubble of ignorance and you don't pay mind to those outside voices, you can accomplish a lot of stuff. Like if you ignore the haters, if you ignore, the limit, those voices that limit you, even especially as a child, then you can do whatever you like. And that's where it kind of did start. Like I remember being really young and writing, like making my own chapbooks. Like my mother had like a typewriter that, I can't remember the brand name of the typewriters. It was like really hard to press the keys. And I remember making like little chapbooks, little stories and chapbooks, and making plays that I would just invite my friends to come and do those plays with me. And look at this now, like now as an adult person, I write stories, I make plays, and it's kind of come full circle. And so I kind of say that I kind of let other artists know, it's like, you know what, you don't have to wait for someone to give you permission to call yourself a writer. Guess what? If you write, you're a writer. And it doesn't matter what kind of writing that is. If you kind of like feel uh, passionate about the writing and you stay consistent with your writing, then that's what makes you a writer. Same with art or dance or any of the, filmmaking or what have you. So I just say, just really, really throw off those chains of limitation that maybe the outside world, you've learned from the outside world, and just do what you need to do, say what you need to say as an artist and a writer and a filmmaker and a dancer and so on and so forth. And because the universe will support that. And I do know that from experience, like if that's what you feel that you want to authentically do, and you're doing it with good intention and with good purpose, and of course that's all relative, but you're the only person who can really know that, that your intentions are honest, then please, we need more of that in the world, because that's the stuff that resonates with beautiful rainbow rings out into the world. We kind of really we need more of that. So kind of that's just what I've been doing. I really think that it's I've just stayed tapped into the child in myself, if I could put it that way, and as a result, I mean, gosh, like you were listing off all of those residencies and all of those places. I have never trained formally as an artist or a writer, but it's something that's natural, innate inside of me, and I know that others have that as well. And maybe it's not even just one little artistic practice, as you know, Pam. Like we all have many hats, creative hats that we can wear and we juggle just to try to make a go of it. But if you can stay, come from that really beautiful, honest, childlike place, I think that's what that helps us along. And also, as a mentor, gosh, I can never say this enough, and that is, do your best to find that community, because that community, like, you learn so much from that community. I've learned so much from finding my writing community and my native writing community, and then just from there, it's the sky's the limit. Because with my writing, I have then turned the writing into recording. I've turned the recording into performance. I've turned the performance into video, and I'm excited to see where else it all can go. So that's the advice I give to people coming up, and I can really only speak to those expressions that I have found success with. And it's if you haven't the training, it's almost like, how often do we hear, Pam, folks who go, oh gosh, as an adult person, I had to unlearn all those things I learned, like through religion or through college or, university or whatever, not to bash education, but some of those things could be limiting or not in the vein in which you need to follow, then, and without that, then it's just one less step you need to get to be where you need to be.
I really love that advice, because when you think about the world, about society, especially for us as Native people, like colonization, there are so many things that are limiting. And some of them are, limiting, and they're not necessarily a bad thing, like education, formal education, good thing. But there's inherent limitations in it. Same with religion. Religion's not necessarily a bad thing, but there's a lot of limitations in it.
Yeah.
It's like people, societies, what community you live in, what province, the laws, like there's so many different things that are limiting. And one thing that I've really noticed, and you and I were talking about this, we come from a generation when there was no social media, right? So our childhood is playing outside, using our imaginations, acting out plays and things like that, playing in nature. The people that you were in contact with was a little less. So, there's some great people you're in contact with, not so great people. Social media has exposed us to the best and the very worst of the world. And so your advice around ignore the haters and don't pay attention to the limitations is so important, because besides what you see, like someone might look at January and say, look at all these prestigious awards that she's winning. Her life must just be so easy. No one mustn't have said anything bad. And I can tell you from my experience, there's a lot of haters. There's a lot of people saying, what do you think you're doing? And who do you think you are? And your content sucks, and you're a terrible person, and just everything that's mean. And you can literally get stuck there. So your advice around just ignore the haters, it seems very simple, but wow, for our artistic expression and creativity to not be weighed down by, I wonder if everyone in the world is going to like this.
Yeah, it's that's so true. It's the term, I keep saying that word ignorance, but it's not that. It's about staying liberated, with what you need to do. And I'll take that a little further if you don't mind, Pam. So here's an example. So recently I made the application to be the Ontario Poet Laureate. It was my second application, because this was the second year that they were offering the position. And it's supported by, the province of Ontario Arts Council, and so on and so forth. And the first year I got an interview, and they took a pass because it was land back time, and they go, oh, girlfriend's land back. We don't want to have to answer to that. Bye. Thanks for the interview. See you later. And they went on and they chose who they chose. Lovely poet, Randell. And then I waited 2 years. I thought, I'm going to go after this again, because I know I could really, really do a good job at this. And I really wanted that position, as someone who, again, without the literary training in my career, I'm probably not. I mean, maybe I will. I don't know. Who the hell knows? Get those literary grand awards. But I know as a poet laureate, I could achieve that. And I'm, again, at the damn age of 61, I'm thinking of legacies in my life and in my career, right? So anyway, so I made the application again to the Ontario Poet Laureate. I got my interview, wonderful. Made it to the next phase, had my next interview, wonderful. And then I made it to the third interview. And this was an in-person interview at the legislature in Toronto, Ontario legislature. And so I sit down in front of the committee and And one of the first questions is like, what's the most controversial piece of writing that you've done that you could tell us about? Basically, they were asking me to help them know how to eliminate me as a candidate, which I thought was really fucking strange. Anyway, so I was very, very, very honest with them. And I said, it's probably got to be the Red Erotic book, which I self-published in 2010. It was all about is Indigenous erotica, my own personal erotica poetry, along with Indigenous erotica artwork by 8 different Native artists. Fine, good. So I tell them about that. I tell them about why I put this collection together. And that was so, it was a way to combat the shame and the removal of our sensuous selves through that residential school through colonial interruption. And I made it very clear exactly what it was. I said, and I really hope that the younger generation will now have a lexicon to speak about their sensuality and their sexuality. And let's all get to a really healthy place and reclaim this so that we can be whole human beings once again. And I mean, that makes sense to you and I would think, yeah. And so next thing I know, so I walk away from that interview feeling pretty good, because it went really well. I have got great personality and I know how to speak. People did, they didn't intimidate me. I don't care. Like they had a Speaker of the House was on the committee and who cares? And so the next thing I know, I get an order in my website for the Red Erotic book, and they've ordered it over at the Legislative Library. I said, okay, they want to have a look and see what I'm talking about. Here you go. So I sent it on over, and I didn't hear back at all. This was the deadline for that position was January. It's now August, and I don't know when you'll be airing, streaming this, but they still haven't announced anyone.
Wow.
And I got back to them in June. I go, you know what? I said that, you know how busy June is for Native people? I said, I need to know if I'm being considered or what's going on, pushy Mohawk, right? So they quickly reply, they go, oh, the position's been filled. But like I said, it's now end of August. We're soon to be in September and no one's been announced. So I don't know what the heck happened if all of those like shortlist candidates all had an erotica book or all had affiliation with Banff. I don't know what, I don't know what they were kind of looking for. So it's very strange. And it's sad because that was the position was created as a legacy for Gord Downey, the lead singer of Tragically Hip, and who I'm a big fan of, So I thought, oh, it's a shame that they're not filling this position. So anyway, that's me telling on them.
But that's good to know. People need to hear that it's, just because you're a famous person, in my eyes, you're one of those famous people, that doesn't mean that politics don't get involved, that personalities don't get involved, that there's other factors, that it doesn't take anything away from you. In fact, it's all away from them. And I just think, gosh, if I was on a committee, I'd be saying, what is your best piece of work? What is your most what speaks to your soul? What represents you as an artist and a human being, as opposed to what's the most controversial? Because we don't want a controversial artist. And I'm thinking, wait a second, isn't art and expression and creativity supposed to be outside the bounds?
Yeah. I mean, it was fun. You get it, you get it. And I mean, I got it too. And I just thought it was kind of unrealistic because in the first year when they had opened up the position within the committee in that first interview, one of the committee members said, you're prime person to speak about residential school in this position. And I said, well, as a poet, I suppose so. But at the same time, they were asking the person, the candidates to be apolitical. And I'm like, you can't do that, man. That's impossible. That's a recipe for failure, So anyway, I think they've yet to kind of really figure it out. What a poet really is and what their expectations of a poet should and can be. So anyway, it's a little thorn in my side, but I carry on and we'll see what happens with that anyway. I mean, has anything ever happened like that to you, Pam, where you just go, oh, there's no way I could have even succeeded here because they had
Yes. And people think because you have a certain position or you've done a certain thing or that, you have certain credentials that you're just going to get everything. Everything just comes to you easy. And it's like, no, there are a million different factors. And just because, say, one province or one university picks a poet laureate because they're controversial, because they challenge, the status quo, because they speak out against racism, doesn't mean somewhere else they're going to do the same thing. They could be caring more about themselves than someone else. So, you
Yeah.
know, that is their loss, because you have just done so many phenomenal things, but now I have a thorn in my side. I'm going to be watching to see what happens.
I know. I'm really holding myself back from following up even further. I just
Yeah.
go, hey, just knock it off. Just let it go.
Yeah. It's one of those things where, so I am, in the grand scheme of the universe, just a baby. But in my mind, there are still things I want to do that I haven't done. For example, and I want to talk to you about your role at the Banff Center Indigenous Storytellers and Spoken Word Residency, your mentorship, because I want people to understand, what does it mean to be a writer in residence, for example? And
Mm,
then what does it mean to also have the role of a lead mentor?
mm.
This is one of the places where I have always wanted to apply to
Oh,
be a writer in residence,
oh.
but I have not followed my own advice to not be too chicken about it.
Oh,
So,
you
yeah,
should.
so isn't that crazy? Like, and people would say, "Oh, blah blah blah. Why?" And it's like, "Oh, do you know how chicken I am to share my writing ideas? Do you know how chicken I am for people to say, 'What? You shouldn't be here?'" It never goes away, at least for me. There's always something. And it's one thing that I have yet to do. But speaking of which, I want to know, what's it like to be a writer in residence? What's it like to be a mentor? I mean, those are two very important but kind of separate jobs.
They are. Yeah, they're two different skill sets, that's for sure. But one does support the other. So as a writer in residence, like the best thing about that is the steady income. Because I mean, I'm very, very fortunate that I get to work independently as a writer. I work full time independently as a writer. I always am getting these contracts, and I'm so fortunate. Trust me, I don't take that for granted at all. But within that, working with those institutions or with the agencies or the organizations that host the residency, gosh, I've had nothing but great experiences as a artist in residence with OCAD, with University of Alberta, with what is her name in Vancouver? There was an author who her home is put up. I just can't remember right now, but and in Santa Fe, New Mexico, at the Institute of American Indian Art. And so, gosh, I've just been absolutely, like, I have a really blessed career. I have to say that, and Yawagoa to Spirit for helping me in that way. But within those roles, you are you have the opportunity to write, so you go into these residencies with a project in mind. And I've completed like a few of my books while in residence at different institutions. I remember one of my favorites, actually, I can think fondly back on, is the UNBC, the University of Northern British Columbia residency in Prince George, BC. And gosh, I was writing like a fiend up there. It was really cold, and I was really squirreled away in my office for a lot of that time. But it seemed to serve me well. And I wrote one of my favorite books there, Totem, Poles, and Railroads. I loved those poems. I traveled up and down that freaking highway of tears, man, and I gained inspiration and insights while I was there about that highway and that reality, what it is like for a Native woman to live in that area, in that territory. And just really got a lot of support from the institution itself. And so that's, if you need to get away, if you find that travel or being in a different unfamiliar location inspires you, then absolutely a residency is for you. It's not for everyone, but it is, and you're away, like in doing a writer in residence. If you are in residence at the location, then yeah, it was away for, the whole school year for that one. But the residency I did at McMaster, it was during COVID, and I never stepped foot on campus, even though I was just like 30-minute drive away from Six Nations. It was during COVID, and I did everything remotely. But that was still a great thing, because we created 2 podcasts during that residency with the local writers. And sometimes the libraries partner with the universities or the residencies. And so I got to spend time, like the residency I did at Western University, actually, the London Public Library partnered with them. And so I was once a week, I had to travel down to London, which is an hour and a half from where I live. And in the morning, I would be at the office. I'd have office hours at the university, and then I'd go to the public library, and it was just wonderful. Like, I just loved it. I know how to manage and organize a schedule for myself, and so that was easy to do. And then it was just I'm just thrilled to speak about story with people. I love to hear about what they are, what they feel passionate about, to put into words and onto a page, and whatever experience I've gained through my own, learning, and through other residencies where I have learned, where I have been there as a participant, then that's what I bring to these situations. And that's the same with Audible, like the work I'm doing with the Indigenous writer circle through Audible. Audible is, if you called it right, Pam, you get, that's a big, huge deal. It is, because Audible is like a global institution. Everybody loves their audiobooks these days, and Audible has got lots of cha-ching, right? They got the wee stuff. So I'm so glad that they're investing in the new literary voices coming into the fold. And that's exactly what we're seeing happen. And the roster of mentors, like, I'm just like, so honored to be part of the roster of mentors that they support to, share our experience and knowledge with the writers coming into that circle. And I really hope we continue to see that go on. It's in its fourth year now, and I'm really hoping it will carry on into the fifth year. The participants there, gosh, they get so much support, not just from the mentors, but we do these monthly industry sessions where they learn about the how to approach the publisher, where do you find your funding, how do you do audio recording, and that sort of thing. So it's like, now we see a lot of support and training that's not in the institution, but that's available in these different areas. And same with Banff Center. I hope we get to see you come to Banff, Pam, because we had one of the best times this past year. We went from a 2-week residency in the storytelling residency to a 3-week residency, and the feedback after this year was, we need another week. So people are ready, they're kind of preparing to be away from the comfort of their homes and the familiarity of their families, to dedicate to their writing in a very creatively charged environment like Banff Center is, to be there. And we just had an amazing time. I have to say, I was very happy to participate in the selection process for the participants, and you could just see, you could see who's going to get along with who, and that really worked out. Like, as soon as we got there, everybody kind of just fell in love with one another, like we really did, and we had a great time for 3 weeks. So yeah, no, it's I recommend, if you see a residency come up, in terms of, like, if you can be a mentor to others, or even if you want to still work on your writing skills or storytelling skills, then by all means, this is the almost an alternative way to get that training outside of the institution. So I really highly recommend it.
Wow. So, like, I had no idea all of that was happening in a residency, because I've never done that. I've been on the academic side of things. So I've published books, but
Right.
it's more on the legal side, the academic side. I've never done a novel, for example,
Oh,
which
yeah.
is my dream. Like, when I was a little kid, I think I was like 6, I started a novel about how earthworms were going to come and eat humans. And
Oh,
then there was going to have to be a little girl to save all the humans from these
oh,
earthworms. And so I
oh
have
my
it
God.
like partially written out, but my whole life I've wanted to be a writer. And every time I tell my kids that, because I keep saying that's the one thing that's left, like my dream come true, be a writer. And they keep looking at me going, Mom, you are a writer, you've published books, you publish articles. And I was like, it's not the same thing to me
Yeah.
than if I was to go and be like Dean Koontz or Stephen King or
Yeah.
someone who can tell a story. Like that is an art.
It's never
Like,
too late, Pam Palmater. It's never too late. I'm going to encourage you, like seriously. We had like some nice variations in the generations of people in our residency too. I made sure of that, and so it's never too late. Don't worry that there's just all going to be youngsters. We've got everybody represented there. So and like I said, you coming back to Daryl McLeod, who we're dedicating this episode to. He came into his writing later in his life. And my God, he had stories to tell. My God, did he have stories to tell, So yeah, I hope you get to nurture that.
Okay, well, it's just the universe is putting
Yeah.
us together. But I want to talk about like the diverse nature of your work, because you know how there's some people, they're a painter and they paint, or some people they're a songwriter and they just write songs. You have kind of done a little bit of everything. I feel like you're the artist of the universe. That's like, you know what? I can engage in song, I can engage in writing, I can engage in like all these different things, spoken word. I mean, poetry, that is something very unique. You couldn't just say be a legal article lawyer and then just all of a sudden, boom, oh, now I'm a poet. So, and some of these things you've won awards for, become famous for. So I'm hoping I can ask you first about the things that you won some of your awards for. So I'd love to start with imagineNATIVE, because a very quick story. I have never been part of like a film media arts festival, right? I just doing my little work. And then someone you and I know very well, Miss Kim Wheeler,
Oh yeah.
who is always in the background trying to support people. It's like, you know what, Pam? Why don't you put your kids' podcast in this festival? And I'm like, oh no. What do I have to offer a festival? I'm not. And she's like, no. She was like, no, you're doing it. She just kept, nagging at me. And so I did it. And it ended up winning an award. And I am so like, I have my little tiny, the first little artistic award ever for my kids' podcast. And I'm like, I never would have done that were it not for Kim Wheeler saying, you need to do this. You need to branch out. And so here we have imagineNATIVE. You won the Best Experimental Sound Prize. And you're going to have to explain that to me, because what is experimental sound and what was the work that you won the prize for?
Yeah, I love this question. I love working in sound. And I think my love of sound almost is in direct kind of parallel to the work that I do in radio. Like I love radio, and I caught the radio bug from my mother, actually, who at this, just as we're speaking, I'm sure has got 10 radios in her house. She's just a radio fan. But growing up with radio, back in the day, and never kind of thinking that, oh my gosh, I could ever be on radio. But once I started doing radio, I really friggin' loved it. And what I loved with radio was the fact that when I entered radio around 2007, maybe a little bit earlier than that, all the way to 2017, when I finished doing like my show for 10 years, the amount of native music that was coming out of the native music scene was just burgeoning. It was just exploding. And so I really got to sink my teeth into what was new, what was now, what was coming up. And that just thrilled me to bits. And then once I started to learn how to work the audio programs on the computer as a result of working in radio, I then started to adapt those skills into sound art making. And sound art, what I discovered joyfully was you had the ability to create a language within itself through just sound. I discovered that you could create a narrative without words, without dialogue, without language, through sound. And this is what thrilled me when I realized that. I thought I can create a story just by using sound. And I did. The first sound art piece I created, it was a journey from the earth plane up into space plane, and all of these voices that were out in space. And it was just, I loved it. And I just got to just explore that on my own, you know. And then the piece, it was called The Battle Within, the piece that won Best Experimental Sound at the imagineNATIVE Festival, again, was doing that. I was creating a narrative that maybe I don't necessarily need to define for others, but letting others enjoy and experience and go on that journey themselves through sound. And they go, oh yeah, maybe I recognize that sound, or I have a relationship to that sound. And this is where I started to, again, like understand different things about sound. Culturally, we had sounds that belong to us. Pam, you have, as a Mi'kmaq person, you have sounds that belong to your nation, that belong to you as a birthright. And as a Haudenosaunee person, I have sounds that belong to me and my nation as birthright. And I have the right to use those sounds, you know? And so I was exploring that. I was exploring how can I represent or introduce myself as a sound artist with the sounds that belong to me. And so there are those definitions as well, eh? And then just kind of having fun with, you know, the app and the things that you can find in the sound app, the sound editing software and things like that. That's also fun, and working the effects and things. So I love producing. I love producing audio. Cool. And then I started to mess with that and double down on my joy and start to work with sound and my poetry. And then moving that into video. So to sound, but you know, they say, and this is a religious reference that I'm told, is that it all began with the sound. So the big boom, the big is like the ultimate first sound is when the universe is created with a boom, and then it goes from there. So and then just recognizing, hey, I have a voice too. And so, you know, with radio, like when I developed my sound artwork, I was also developing my radio work. So the two went hand in hand. It was a audio experience for sure. And just something that I just really love doing.
That's so cool. I like how it's experimental sound, because it's not, you know, your stereotypical, here, write some lyrics, put some songs to that. It's actually something really different. So, which makes me ask, so you've got this, you know, the experimental sound prize. Is this at all related, the American Indian Film Festival Best Music Video, or was this something totally different?
Somewhat. I had created a poem called Ego of a Nation, and the Ego of a Nation poem was a poem that I wrote in commemoration to Colton Boucher being murdered, you know, by traveling on his territory in the racist rural areas of Saskatchewan, and being murdered at point blank range by a gunshot. And thinking about this story. And so I had written this poem called Ego of a Nation, which speaks to the values of, where do you find the ego of a nation? You find the ego practiced inside the courts of law. Now I'm talking to a lawyer, I understand that. But within the courts of law, that's where the nation defines and promotes the things within that country that they value and that they say is okay and not okay. And they're the process of that. So to me, the Ego of a Nation was like, is telling us in this instance what they value. And they value a man's right to protect his property rather than the murder and the loss of life of a brown young man. So I wrote that piece. And then I made the video by doing exactly what Colton Boucher did. And that was, in the video, I'm on farm property around this area. So I'm putting myself out there in a vulnerable way. I'm on the train tracks, whereas, of course, you know, Mohawks are famous for blocking train tracks. So I thought, let's go on a train track. So I'm on a train track in the video. I'm on rural property in the video, and then I'm also in the sanctity of the longhouse, and like an old longhouse. Subsequently, the longhouse where we were filming has now burnt down. So it was lucky that we shot that film when we did. But I suppose the message of the poem and the pacing or the visuals within the poem that we captured, it's just a 3-minute thing, seemed to resonate with folks. And I mean, when they said, when they contacted me and they go, you're the winner of the best music video, I was floored. Like, I was floored. I thought, I was a friggin' poet, man. Like, I just like write these poems. What the heck, So I didn't expect it at all, but it was just an honor, like a great, great big honor.
I love it, though. It's our story. Like, Koltumbushi's story is our story, and we could all relate to it in different ways. Like people shooting at Mi'kmaq people on the water for simply trying to fish. For you guys, it's trying to protect your territory, and them sending in the army. Like, there's just so many different ways you could just. That's so amazing. I just love this work. But I do want to ask you this question. I meant to tell you that I was going to ask you this question, but hey, now it'll be off the cuff.
Okay.
Of all your work, and I know they're all your babies, I know. The question that the government asked you about the most controversial, I want to know, what is the work that you've done that is the thing that speaks most to you, the thing that just fills up your soul the most? And it doesn't have to be like anything that won an award. It might be like no external limits. Just what is the work that you're like, this is my favorite thing I've ever done, if there's a such thing?
Wow, that's a good question. I guess the first thing that pops into my mind is a couple of years ago, I had written a comedy series. And I'm kind of like, in my career, I'm kind of leaning more and more into comedy. Like, I just love it. Like, I find I'm even like kind of like composing comedy bits in my head. Sometimes it's fun. And but I had written this comedy series as a result of applying to pilot call for work from APTN. And I thought, I'm going to, I have this idea for this. And of course it's about radio, because I love radio. So I'm like really layering my loves of things on top of each other. And so I wrote a comedy series called Indians on the Airwaves. And why I like it so much is because it did get some funding from Canada Arts Council. Thank you, Canada Arts Council. And we were able to shoot 10 episodes of this comedy series called Indians on the Airwaves. And it was just like being a kid again, because I gathered up my friends. And I said, come on, let's go play. Let's have fun. Let's shoot this thing. And we got to film it in the CKRZ Res radio station here on Six Nations and other local areas here. And we just had like so much fun. And I mean, it's not up to broadcast standard, that's for sure. But it's on the web, it's on the YouTubes. And when we had a community screening here of it, the laughs were real. People were loving it, So to me, that was fun because it was a real collaboration. Like, it was just like getting all your friends together and playing. So again, that's the child thing in me that keeps me going as an artist. If it's not fun, why the heck do it?
Exactly. That's the whole point of it. Like, people need to be chill.
Yeah.
Okay. So I've got two questions. The last question's really going to be, like, what's ahead for you, because I know you're working on a certain other projects, but I also just kind of wanted to get your take on AI, because there's, lots of people saying it's the end of everything, right? Like, it's the end of humans, it's the end of authenticity. And then there's some people who are playing with AI to say, well, here's my artistic idea. I'm going to use AI to, I don't know, create a figure that I'm going to put in a video in my artwork. Like, so what's your take on it? Because I just don't know.
Yeah, well, I'm with you. I don't know. But all I can say is Well, it's interesting because my longtime collaborator and brother Jackson Two Bears had brought me in. He's brought me into this project called Abundant Intelligences, and this is a project where all of these hubs from all over the world, like Hawaii and Aotearoa, New Zealand, and here on Six Nations, where we are chatting with knowledge keepers, traditional cultural knowledge keepers, and asking them what their take is on AI. All I know to say is that AI is something that we will inevitably be having a relationship with. No matter if you're an artist, an academic, a stay-at-home mom, what have you, AI is in our face. And I have been describing it as like it's the new two-row wampum relationship. Whereas, like, we created the two-row wampum relationship because we knew the Dutch weren't going away anytime soon, and we knew we had to kind of get out in front of that relationship to manage it. So I think it's important that we're talking about AI because, again, it's a relationship that we can't ignore, and we have to find our footing with it on our own terms. Where I'm at with it on a personal level is like, I don't know about you, Pam, but I really, really think the most successful art is art that really makes me have a reaction, whatever that is. It makes me cry. It makes me angry. It makes me excited. It makes me inspired. Whatever it is, songs that just really move you, or films that really move you or inspire you. And I'm not so sure I've experienced that with AI art.
No.
So that's where, until it can, like, really hit me in the heart, then I would say, oh, there's something here. But for now, I'm just like, okay.
And of course, as a lawyer, I'm like, okay, cultural appropriation, okay, abuse, okay, copyright infringement. Like, all these things are popping up in my head. Like, already people appropriate our culture and use it for horrible purposes or for big profits, and nothing goes to and I'm thinking, oh, geez, AI just has access to everything, and how are people going to use that? That's my like initial concern. I think it's a tool. Like, I can ask, AI, hey, AI, what is the, I don't know, a beat for a movie? What's the movie beat? What are the steps? Like those I like the resource side of it. It's a little faster than internet, but I'm very worried about cultural appropriation, copyright infringement, trademark infringement, all the things, traditional knowledges as if they're just up for grabs.
Yeah, and this is just another territory, another expression, if you will, that's not even considering us half the time. Do you know what I mean? Like we're a thing. We're an afterthought, and so that's why, unless we've got people on the inside of these things really designing them that will benefit us, because I think, like, unless AI, we can find ways for AI to help perpetuate our culture and for us to, really help reclaim the things that were lost through colonial interference, then I really don't have a whole lot of use for it. I don't use AI in my creation. I mean, maybe I do. I don't friggin' know. I don't know what AI. But,
I know. Who knows what we're doing?
Exactly. But anyway, that's just where I'm at with that. And it's in this series of interviews that we're conducting through this Abundant Intelligences project. It's really interesting to hear other people's take on it.
I know. It's like, I don't want to be the typewriting company that said, who cares? These keyboards and computers are not going anywhere. That said, what's come with computers and the dangers in computers too. But okay, so today on Twitter, I just happened to be looking through, I guess it's X now, but Twitter as we commonly know it. I just perusing it, getting, waiting for us to have this interview. And of course, there's something on there, talking about you doing this gig with SiriusXM that our wonderful friend Kim Wheeler helped connect you with, and that you have a new episode out. So I'm wondering if you wouldn't want to talk about what that gig is and if it's been a great experience for you at Sirius.
Oh, I love making radio. It's my happy place. It really is. I just love making radio. I love conducting interviews, and I've been doing it all summer, Pam. And so the fact that I'm closing up my kind of interview series with you interviewing me is really wonderful. The universe is having a good laugh. Anyway, but yeah, I've been there's been a lot of really interesting things happening on Six Nations, so I really didn't have to go far to find interesting people and interesting events to cover for the SiriusXM. I finished filing all of my episodes for the summer series, if you will. There's 9 episodes. And Brandon Montour brought the Stanley Cup home to Six Nations, and he's homeboy. He's from Six. I got to meet his parents, well, his father anyway, and that was pretty exciting. And then we had an acting symposium here on Six Nations that was really interesting to speak to the mentors of that acting symposium and some of the participants. We've got a plethora of great musicians here on Six Nations, in case you didn't know, and it's so wonderful to speak with them all the time, and just so on and so forth. And we had the first Miss Indigenous Canada pageant. Pageants are kind of a big thing around here. We have a pageant for the fall fair coming up soon too. But anyway, all of that said, it's easy work for me. Like, I love it. I enjoy it. I know how to, put an episode together, do some audio editing, and so on and so forth like that. But the process of getting paid from SiriusXM has been nothing but a blender. And so I had to get a little fucking Mohawk on them and and just get at them and just go, what the friggin' process what is going on here? I said, this process is an insult. Like, you can't even, I've already done the work. You asked me to be patient. I've been patient. I've given you all the forms, all the invoices, 4 different damn invoices, and I don't know what's going on there. But anyway, trust, they're going to pay. Trust, they're going to pay. But it's just like, why do you make people suffer like this? What if I was in need of that money to pay my rent? Like, what if? You know? And like, they're just going to stick me with it. But anyway, but that's the administrative side, and for whatever reason, it's been a pain in the ass, but the work itself, love it. And again, Kim Wheeler, our radio producing queen there, I was just so honored when she kind of tapped me on the shoulder and go, do you want to cover my show? Because it's the Kim Wheeler show I'm doing.
Yeah.
The Kim Wheeler show. She goes, should we change the name? I said, Kim, no, you're going to be back. I'm not going to change the name. I'll guest host. I'm happy to do that. So no, it's been absolutely wonderful. And they don't pay much either. Just, in a sideline. It's not much. It's not much at all. But again, because I love it so much, and we'll see what happens after that. So if anyone's listening and they have a radio gig, hit me up, man.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. That's so awesome. Yeah. You are like not even having an interview. You're literally like talking to an auntie on the res, just, jibber jabbering about all good things, all awesome things. You take everything in stride. You're positive. You make me want to do everything that you're doing. I love everything that you do. And you are like this big, huge personality, just, out there giving good vibes. And I think we need more of that. Less cranky people, more good vibe people.
Let's leave the cranky at the door. Yeah, come and play with us, Pam Palmater. Come and play with us at Banff, eh?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, as soon as I get off, I'm going
okay.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time. My podcast is long, so I really appreciate it. You're going to be in this collective of episodes that's all just awesome artists. And again, we're dedicating this episode to Daryl McLeod, his family, his friends, all of his impact, all of his work, and we know he's on the moon, right? Based on your story. Yes. And thank you to all the listeners for listening, for using this in your classrooms, for choosing to hear from authentic Indigenous voices, not any of the fakes or the stuff you get on Wikipedia. Like, you're actually hearing the voices of real Native people doing real Native things. And anything you can do to support artists, do it. We need all the support, and definitely check out all of January's work. I will leave links to everything that she does and has done and her publishing company. And thank you again.
My honor and pleasure. Sincerely. Thank you, Pam.
Till next time, keep living a warrior life. We'll all